Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into a massive paradox sitting right at the very heart of the modern American economy. If you just glance at the top-line national indicators, you'd probably think everything is absolutely booming. But if you look a little closer at the lived reality of millions of American households, well, a completely different, much darker story starts to emerge. Today, we're unpacking the structural forces that are keeping a huge portion of the population completely trapped in this relentless paycheck-to-paycheck cycle.
Because behind all those glowing national economic reports, there are millions of stark individual realities. Take this recent participant from a Federal Reserve survey, for example. Now, they're making between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. That is solidly middle income. But listen to what they're saying. Sometimes I do fall behind just with basics like food. I do have to make things stretch. However, it's barely working. For so many people right now, the entire focus has completely shifted away from economic mobility and downgraded strictly to day-to-day survival.
All right, Section 1, the K-shaped economy, a tale of two realities. There is this sheer, rapidly growing contrast in America today. On one side, you've got the macro economy, and it is thriving. In the third quarter of 2025, U.S. GDP grew at a really robust 4.4%, with unemployment sitting at a historically stable 4.4% as well. So on paper, it looks remarkably resilient. But down in the microeconomy, it is a totally different world. As of late 2025, 16% of adults were completely unable to pay their bills in full. Plus, you have this massive reliance on gig work, which means highly unpredictable incomes for a growing share of the workforce. It is, quite literally, a two-speed economy, and tens of millions of Americans are stuck in the lower gear. Moving on to Section 2, the income illusion, nominal gains versus real losses. So if you've looked at your paycheck recently and thought, hey, I'm making more money, but I somehow feel poorer, I promise you, you are not alone. From May 2025 to May 2026, nominal average weekly wages, so the literal dollars you actually earn, went up by 3.7%. Not bad, right? But wait, the inflation rate over that exact same period was 4.2%. When wage growth trails inflation like that, you experience a direct, undeniable decrease in your purchasing power. And the crucial takeaway here is a deficit of -$6. When you adjust that average weekly wage for inflation, real wage growth actually declined by 0.5%. That means, on average, the American worker lost about $6 a week in real purchasing power over that year. The numbers printed on the paycheck definitely got bigger, but the amount of life those numbers could actually buy, it shrank. This brings us to Section 3, the cost of survival, the squeeze of essential expenses. If we look at the Consumer Price Index data for May 2026, it becomes crystal clear exactly why inflation acts essentially like a regressive tax on the working class. Energy spiked an astronomical 23.5% over just 12 months. Food at home went up 2.7%, and apparel went up 4.8%. Now, remember, these are non-discretionary categories. You can't just choose not to heat your home, or skip putting gas in your car to get to work, or stop buying groceries for your family. Drilling down into these unavoidable pain points shows just how tight the squeeze really is. Gasoline prices surged 40.5%. Fuel oil increased by nearly 59%. And then you get to the grocery store, and basic fruits and vegetables rose 6.1%, with non-alcoholic beverages up 5.8%. For lower and middle-income households who already spend a disproportionately large percentage of their budget on food and energy, these spikes force immediate, incredibly painful cutbacks in other essential areas like saving for emergencies or even getting medical care. Section 4. The housing affordability crisis, the rent escalation. When it comes to just keeping a basic roof over your head, there is a shocking disparity in financial strain. The government officially defines a household as cost-burdened if they're forced to spend more than 30% of their income just on housing. Now, while a significant 23.6% of homeowners are cost-burdened, look at the renters. A staggering 51.8% of renters fall into this category. That means more than half of all renters in the United States are pouring a frankly dangerous amount of their income straight into housing, which leaves practically nothing for everything else. And the sheer scale of this housing burden is historic. Nationwide, 33% of all U.S. households, that is 42.5 million families, are cost-burdened. Just to put rent inflation into some crazy perspective, the Rent Consumer Price Index is up 2,012% since 1914. But the geographic and income disparities are where you see the true crisis. Down in Florida, a massive 62.1% of renters are cost-burdened. And get this,
If you make between $30,000 and $45,000 a year, an unbelievable 72% of those earners are cost-burdened. This proves that severe housing instability isn't just an issue for the lowest earners anymore. It has pushed deep, deep into the American middle class.
Section 5 now, the consumer debt trap, or bridging the gap. So what happens? For millions of people, high-interest credit is literally the only tool left to desperately bridge the gap between their stagnant incomes and the skyrocketing cost of survival. When the money runs out on the 20th of the month, well, the groceries and the utility bills simply have to go on the plastic. And the result of that survival tactic is a staggering compounding weight, $18.8 trillion. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, that is the total U.S. household debt balance as of the first quarter of 2026. To really put that into perspective, it's an increase of $4.6 trillion since just before the pandemic. Entire households are leveraging themselves to the absolute hilt just to stay afloat. But here is the true alarm bell. This dam is actively beginning to break. If we look at delinquency transition rates from the first quarter of 2025 to 2026, the structural fractures are completely visible. Student loan delinquencies jumped from 8.04% to nearly 11%. Credit card delinquencies are ticking up over 7%. Mortgages transitioning into serious delinquency are accelerating too, moving from 1.22 to 1.48%. Overall, 4.8% of all outstanding consumer debt is now in some stage of delinquency. People's budgets are stretching to their absolute breaking points.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 6, the future of fragility, a structural constant.
Ultimately, the structural drivers of this paycheck-to-paycheck economy are practically designed to keep people trapped. First, you have cost inelasticity. Like we said, you cannot negotiate the price of groceries or rent, and those non-negotiable costs are vastly outpacing your wages. Second, a massive chunk of household income is now being diverted simply to service that $18.8 trillion of debt, very often at 20-year high interest rates. And finally, and this might be the most devastating for the long term, is asset concentration. Back in 1989, households under the age of 40 held 12% of the nation's wealth. Today, those under 40 hold just 6.6%. Wealth is so heavily concentrated at the very top and in older generations that younger working-class households are left entirely dependent on labor income. Income that, as we've seen, just isn't keeping up.
So, when we read all these headlines praising the resilience of the U.S. economy, the strong GDP, and the stable employment numbers, we have to pause and ask ourselves a very serious question. If that macro resilience is subsidized by an increasingly fragile foundation of individual consumer debt and profound middle-class struggle, is it actually sustainable? What does this mean for the future of American financial stability if a full third of the country is permanently living in survival mode? Something to think about.